the owl set. One owl is not set yet. Hi, Peter and Kristen.
Are you good?
Yeah, I just got to get the owl set up too, but I'm good. You can make me host and jump
Yeah.
off. Me too.
Co-host. See you, bye.
Okay, so the microphone is working, but the video has not yet. But I do have Kristen.
Okay with that.
I know, like Kristen and Peter on. And it is recording.
Okay.
So I'll play around and see if I can get that,
Okay.
but
Sounds good, thanks. We're okay with technical difficulties, we know it happens sometimes. So we are calling this meeting of the Mont Vernon School Board to order on 6:05. We are a couple minutes late because we had technical difficulties, but here we are. We are honored to have some kindergarten teachers with us and our school nurse and principal. Happy to have you all here. I don't see any members of the public with us here this evening. So our public input 1 of 2. We're just going to skip over that and head right into our student teacher presentations. We're here for you. You're up.
Yeah, so I'll do a little intro here. So we have Miss Galligan and Miss Philibot, our 2 kindergarten teachers here tonight. So I just want to say a couple things about kindergarten. First of all, as we all know, coming back this year into a more normal situation, being what last year was for students, and I've said this, the mix of just different various things that occurred last year for our students, coming in for kindergarten is a very interesting challenge that began the year. And I've been in the classrooms quite a few times and seen Lauren and Megan, and I'll tell you, when we talk about SEL and we talk about with kindergarten, is just making them feel comfortable in a school, understanding the environment of a school, understanding the protocols that you build on over the first several weeks of school. These 2 have just worked exceptionally hard this fall, and I've been really impressed with both of them, their interactions with kids, positivity, and our kindergartners are doing really well. They're doing really well, happy, positive, and I think I might have said this before, but if you're having a bad day, walk into a kindergarten, if that doesn't cure it, nothing will, because it's amazing in those rooms. So tonight, Lauren and Megan are going to talk about nonfiction and some of the things that they're doing with the kiddos. Thank you, Lauren and Megan, for your work.
So we decided to share a lesson, a nonfiction lesson that try to get together a couple times a week as a whole group, since we have 13 we all for an end of the day kind of thing. We focused on, we have a couple of our standards, but in kindergarten, I feel like we do so many standards over and over and over. These are just a couple that we were going to focus on during this. So we decided to pick bears, since we'll be talking about what bears do in winter shortly. So we thought we'd introduce you. So we started with our KWL chart. We first talked about, we asked them, what do you know? So we listed everything they knew. What did they want to know? And then we did a couple of things. So this is us creating the K and the W part.
And then we went into reading this nonfiction story about Whistling Bears. So I read through it, asked some questions, and they were just all very engaged, focusing, asked questions about what we were reading and those type of things. So that's what we did then. And then after we did that, we had them draw a picture of something that they learned from the story. So one said bears have claws, so they do a nice little bear claw. Down here in the center, we have one with a bear catching a fish. They labeled the fish, the type of bear, sun bear, and then
You can see the different, like they're all at such different levels. Some of them will write a whole sentence, some will write a letter, some will just do a picture and we'll write the sentence for them. But it was basically tell us something you learned from the book we read to you. Then we did what we learned after. We went through all the things we learned, and we answered all of our questions, what we wanted to learn. And I think we hit just about everything. And then we did kind of fun part. It's a direct drawing where we, Meg and I both found 2 different spots in the room and we did one step at a time. This is for following directions, listening, that kind of stuff. So we did that with them. So there's some of theirs.
And now me up there, drawing nice there too.
Did
I'm
anybody
such an
can do-
artist.
I know, we can all. do it.
I
It's
love
direct
it.
drawing.
I know, and
It's all-
Oh, so this is a chatter pick. So we had them again with their direct drawing that they did. We had them tell us a fact about a bear that they learned. So I'll try this one more time.
So then we took a picture of it.
Here's my 20 so much. I love you so much. Here's our truck wall. Sometimes bears or grizzly bears eat raspberries.
There's one more.
Bears run really fast.
That's so cute.
There's maybe a
Sneak
couple of
peek.
classes to do it. It'll lead us into what like bears do in winter to kind of relate it to, what's around them. So it's just a little something.
Snippet of what you do, that's
Yeah.
fabulous. That's fabulous. Questions for our presenters?
I'll let you guys go
Mr.
first.
O'Keefe, you should.
Go ahead.
But, so how are you finding like the transition this year from home life to in-school, in-person instruction sort of program? Like, do you think the kids were ready? Any obstacles that you guys encountered the first couple of months?
I feel like for some of them, like the biggest obstacle is always like getting away from home, and especially like with them, they had the whole year before where they were at home for so long.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I feel like this year, especially more than last year, at least for me, that there's been a little bit more of that transition, like the missing mom and that type of thing was a little bit,
I feel like we've gotten past that.
yeah,
now.
a little bit past it. I mean, once
They're happy and
but
excited.
other than that, I mean,
Yeah, I
I
think
think they're doing pretty well.
they're pretty resilient.
They are.
I was watching the Amherst School Board meeting last month at the beginning. Yes, I'm that nerdy. There were some concerns about kindergartners with masks and reading capabilities and their test scores and so forth. Are you noticing any type of sort of issues with regards to mask usage? And
Like Haggerty.
That's it, you worry sometimes, because you
Yeah.
can't always hear everybody or see if they're at least doing it with you.
Yeah.
But I think like, we get into smaller groups and I can hear better.
Better,
And I
yeah.
think we're great. It's not perfect. But I think we're doing okay.
is that the luxury of having small class sizes
I
that you've
think
got
so.
that
And
ability
working
to-
in small, like during our wing time, we take the smaller groups and we're able to
Target that
Yeah.
and see.
And how do you divide those classes? Do you have like a pair that comes in and helps, or
No, yeah, no para. So during wind, during.
We only have
wind-
special education paras. We don't
Yeah.
have any regular education paras.
Yeah.
First time we've ever had this conversation.
I know.
We do have. our
Yeah, our
interventions
readers
do
come in and then we have our reading interventionist comes in twice a week for each of us, and then special ed comes in when reading interventionist isn't there. So 4 days a week, we have extra
Yeah, and we-
help for that wind time.
And we put them in smaller groups and work on whatever they need. If it's a math review of a lesson or reading or letters or.
Or sounds.
I apologize, I just want to make sure I'm tracking properly. So like, how do you break up the small groups? Other kids are working on other projects and you just go into a corner and,
There's, we
Yep,
we
um,
do these, okay, Dream Box is,
So we break them into kind of like centers. So
it's like 3 steps.
yeah, 3 centers, 4 centers, depending on what kind of thing we're doing. So like we'll have them independently do like a write the room, where they go around the room and they practice a skill that we've already previously taught, like either it's rhyming, hearing beginning letter sounds, sometimes counting one-to-one correspondence, adding, basic addition, those types of things. And then there'll be a group working with like me, and then a group working with an interventionist or a special educator.
So
that's
one
in the room at the
independent
time.
group. That's about all.
Yeah.
that's awesome. The last question I've got is like in terms of the space, You guys finding it difficult or easy to collaborate, just because I know the distance between the hallway?
No,
We're great, actually.
we try to make sure our kids are together,
Yeah.
like, this is small school, so we want them to, know each other, and we're together at least twice a week, but we always.
Yeah, we're always chit chatting about
We're not
kindergarten life.
It's been great.
So
And they
who's in
have
what room?
recess.
Or you're in the actual kindergarten room?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you get the bathroom and the
Yeah.
luxury of that, and you have
Yeah,
to.
yeah, and then that transition from bathroom at being the year, so.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, I get a little, so I have to put feet out there, because we're getting a little lost.
Yeah, she needs them out.
We had some tears, so yeah, for me, that was a bit harder transition, just because some kids.
And it's right around the corner. It's
Yeah,
literally
right
just
around the
right
corner,
here,
but they
but
get out and they're like.
It's a big hallway.
It is a big hallway,
It is.
forget.
And you
Some
get
big
turned
kids
around.
up there.
They do get turned around, yeah, so, you
Oh,
know.
we get lost walking to our special, like coming back, they're going, so I'm glad my kids can't leave my room, like,
Yeah,
we're locked
luckily.
in.
I think this is definitely for those feet she had, because helped us. We were, after that, the stress, just all the feet, guys, we're good.
Nice.
So cute.
Well, I know the results that come out from a testing standpoint are phenomenal at kindergarten. Like I said to the folks in first grade, keep up the great work, because it's working, whatever you're doing, and the attachment and the connection you have with the kids. I mean, Lauren, in my house, like, you're still like the best teacher ever. So I know so many years ago, but
I know, I
it's-
really want to know.
it's literally like the connections you guys have with these kids at such a young age. I remember my kindergarten teacher, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's so awesome that you guys are in this position. So thank you.
No, thank you.
If I could just say too, Lauren and Megan are so collaborative in their work. You kind of talked about, the togetherness, but just professionally, just watching them work, plan. We meet once a week at least, and it's really impressive to see how aligned they are in their work together.
So great. Kristen or Pete, did you have any questions?
I did not. I love that little activity where they're talking about the nonfiction animation. That's such a cool way to engage them and really get their attention. So I love the creativity and the tools you all are utilizing. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, we thank you so much for joining us. This was a great presentation. I know from a board perspective, we really love seeing what's happening in the classroom and just connecting with you. And I know anybody who watches the replays, like, we always hear about these things, because it's just great that people can actually get a feel for what's going on there. So thank you so much for your time, and thanks for sharing some of the kid work with us. It's always great. Super fun chatter picks. That's like the funnest thing ever. It's adorable. Yeah, that's adorable. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for taking time out of your night to join us.
We are up to our consent agenda. Approval, do we have anything that we want to pull from the consent agenda? We've got 11 items. NEWA results, yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Anything else? Would you like to discuss the NEWA results before we make a motion to approve, or?
I think it's good.
Yeah. So this is a very manual process, so I always
Yeah.
like to, I always worry that there could be errors, so I double and triple checked my work, but I always like to share we individually pull results and have to then manually calculate all of these. So for 7th grade reading, while growth was low, their achievement is still fairly high for the 7th grade reading. So in a 7th grade is representative of that 6th grade instructional year. But again, there's a big transition that our students go through when they leave Mont Vernon and go up to AMS. So this assessment is fairly early in the school year. So it's hard to know what impact that might have. And really interesting, on our PD day that we had, we were able to share these results. And I know in speaking with Sarah, since Sarah had taught 6th grade last year, so we were looking back at her 6th grade students from last year when we're looking at results, because they can't access them. The kids are at AMS. So we sat and worked together. Dawn was unable to be with us that day, but I did have a chance to meet with Sarah, and it was really fascinating. She was pointing out, oh, that student there's no way that that's an accurate score. I saw the progress and I know where that student might be or should be. So it is interesting. I'm not sure how much of that transition does impact scores or not. It was interesting to get Sarah's perspective. Again, with the math, 50% did meet growth for the 7th grade math, but achievement percentile was 62nd. Now that has been the group that has struggled. They were probably some of the lowest 4th grade math scores we had ever seen out of this cohort of students. I'm not sure if you remember looking at those 4th grade results, and it was, I believe, if I'm thinking the right year, I know it is that cohort that had really struggled with math in general. So for them to have that, 50% of students meeting target growth is huge. And even with that transition to the middle school, but that group in 4th grade had very low scores entering 5th grade. And that was when we actually took Carol and Zach and pushed them into 5th grade to really support Sarah when she taught them in 5th grade. And then we were just lucky enough with COVID that things worked out that she essentially looped with those kids to really give them the benefit and that leg up of continuing to support them. And Sarah said how amazing that was because she was able to build upon all those 5th grade skills that she knows she's taught them. Sometimes it's hard as a teacher to say, didn't you learn this last year? And they all say no. She was like, I taught you this last year. Remember when we did this? And then like you see the light bulbs go on. So, looking at the data from 7th grade, strong growth, typical, but still strong growth coming out of math, but lower achievement, but not surprising if I tracked back that cohort. And again, if there's additional data you need, like if you need me to track cohorts back, because I have all that cohort data when they were a cohort here, that might be helpful to see longitudinally this group. But overall, while Sarah identified a few kids that probably could have performed a little bit better based on what she saw, overall, this was fairly strong for math, and especially for this cohort for previous performance that we had seen from them. With reading, we had lower growth, but they still have high achievement. So they're in the 82nd percentile. So while the growth was lower, it's really hard to pinpoint. 6th grade was also one of the most disrupted last year. They had the most quarantines. I think Sarah was joking. I think she was quarantined 16 times. And I don't know if that was what it felt like or if that was accurate for how much, and that not just Sarah, but the grade level was quarantined numerous times. So they did a lot of switching back and forth between remote and in person. So it's hard to know the impact that had. And it's also hard to know if there's an impact with that transition when students, no matter what, it's a brand new school, they've been there for 3 weeks, they're getting to know teachers. Could that impact performance in some way? So that was 7th grade. For 8th grade, the performance is much lower growth than we would like to see. For some reason, this was consistent across that 8th grade. So if you, I don't know if you clicked on the link or not, but I did include the AMS NEWA results. So you can actually see that full cohort of 8th graders at AMS have pretty low growth scores across the board. We can't quite figure out what that is. I haven't had an opportunity to meet with and I don't work as closely with AMS this year, but I haven't had an opportunity to meet with 7th grade teachers to talk to them. Is this performance what you would expect to see? Or there are certain challenges throughout the year last year? I know we had a lot of, in Amherst in general, we had a lot of kids that were remote, then back in person, then remote, then back in person. We had kids switching every segment, and students were actually sometimes having to change teachers when they were switching back and forth, and kids were getting reorganized every month at the middle school. So I know we certainly had that challenge last year. So I'm not sure if that was part of the impact, or again, if there's a difference, and I'm happy to provide it, but we also, for the Amherst board meeting next week, I did, and again, it unfortunately is manual, so I always caution with the data with that, but I pulled out remote versus in-person, and there weren't that many trends. It wasn't remote did better or in-person did better, but I do have that data, which I'm happy to share with this board too, since that certainly includes your 7th and 8th grade students that were at the middle school. So it's hard to know exactly why the performance was consistent across the cohort. So Again, it's not an issue necessarily with Mont Vernon students having a certain polar gap. From, in looking at that 7th grade year for those students, I can't quite figure out why the growth is so low from 7th grade, because we have incredible 7th grade teachers and the curriculum, we have very strong 7th grade curriculum too. So I can't quite put my finger on what it could be for that, but we were surprised by it. What further questions or more information we might be able to provide it. And we're certainly, looking deeply at individual growth targets too, and really looking at students to make sure we're supporting them over at the middle school.
Questions for Christine?
I'll let somebody else go first.
You can go ahead. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what questions.
We're
to ask
failing
other
these
than
kids,
it's-
right? So with these test results, it's just unacceptable. The amount of money that we're paying tuition, the amount of trust that we put into that building to educate our 7th and 8th graders with results like this, it's just unacceptable by every single stretch of the imagination. If we go ahead and we actually see our next sort of quarterly results coming from NEWA, and they're not improving significantly, we really need to rethink things in a major way, because to have 0 growth, and I'm looking at the Amherst results here, their RIT growth is non-existent, it's not even on the chart. Like, this is an evaluation, remember the NEWA results are a test of ourselves, SAS is a test compared to our peers.
Yes.
So we're clearly showing something's not working. What it is, we don't know, we got to figure that out, because as we go throughout the year, we have to see improvement there.
Yeah.
And I know that's not under the purview of the 5 of us, but we do owe that to the kids that we send down to that building to stress, you gotta fix it. Because they only get one shot at 7th grade and one shot at 8th grade.
Yeah.
And we're moving into the high school, and we're actually seeing problems in the 9th and 10th grade level there as well. So I don't know how we do it, but we definitely need to dive down deep and put our feet to the pavement and try to do something.
And I'm happy to meet with Bethany and with Steve and certainly with teachers as well, and talk to them about, what did they see last year in 7th grade? What are challenges that maybe we weren't aware of? Are these scores representative of where students really are? Is there something else that we need to be doing? And then certainly looking at winter results, which we'll have end of January, beginning of February is when they'll be taking that assessment, but I think that will be really critical for students. And also, I sometimes think students don't always realize, and sometimes maybe even teachers don't always realize that we are looking at these results big picture. Our school board looks at these results. And I think sometimes students might go into the testing environment and think kind of narrowly, oh, this is just for me or my parents. But knowing sometimes that there are many different groups looking at this assessment data to see how much you've learned and how much you've grown, and we want you to show your best work. So I think that is an important piece too, and that could be part of this. So it's hard, there are so many factors that influence student achievement. It's so hard to try to untangle what caused this. And it is also hard to, and I'm happy to pull more longitudinal data for these students just to see, hey, was there a year where they made huge growth? So then there's another year where there's a little less growth, and that is okay, because kids grow in fits and starts sometimes. So if that would be helpful, I'm happy to do that. And I'm happy to work with Bethany and Steve and the teachers and try to dig into this a little bit more. I was surprised by this because our Mont Vernon students over the past few years have performed significantly well. I was surprised at the AMS data in general, and then also surprised that Mont Vernon reflected that AMS data, that it wasn't, Mont Vernon kind of standing out from the rest of that group, which, even in the number of students that are entering accelerated math at the middle school, we often have a big contingent from Mont Vernon, larger percentage than even the Amherst students for the past few years. So I was surprised to see this.
I mean, we're setting these kids up for outstanding success. We saw that last month when we discussed our results from this building. And then they go off and literally it's like we're saying, adios, good luck. And something's failing them.
Yeah, so I'm happy to report back at the next meeting. And do you want more cohort data for this group to go back a few years to kind of see a longitudinal kind of look at this group, or do you want me to just dig
So I
in?
know I'm
to middle
familiar because
school?
we've gotten these reports, and
Mhm.
so
Okay.
like we've identified problems in this building that
Mhm.
Adam and you and before, no offense to you, Tom, but like they've made adjustments and changes to improve and coach and do a great job and clearly reflected in the results that we saw.
Mhm.
Something's happening. And what that is, it's beyond my capability of understanding because I just have no insight there.
Yeah.
But this right here, to the Mont Vernon tax base and to parents of the 7th and 8th grade kids, because I'm one of them, it's just not acceptable.
Mhm.
So, and clearly I'm not deflecting this at you
Oh, no, no.
specifically, but, you know, we owe it to these kids to do it right, and clearly we're not doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me work with Bethany and Steve and report back at the next meeting.
I mean, I get that. It's not, I think the thing is we don't really have questions. What questions can we really ask about it? The data is the data. So it's really more of a matter of just being
What's the
sure
path
that
to
we're
fix it?
addressing it
Right.
and making sure that there's something, if there is something
An
that needs to
outcome.
be addressed,
Mhm.
right, that it can be.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter has a question, actually.
Thank you, Chris.
Oh, Peter, thank you. I had my NEWA report up on my screen. Pete?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
I agree with Steve's comments, and I had made some notes looking at the results, and I guess my question is, how are we communicating back to the students, but also the parents on the scores? What corrective actions they could be taking, and what programs are available for them to improve their skill level? Because we all know that the last 2 years have been really challenging for everybody, but I don't think it's imperative upon the school district to correct the scores for the last 2 years. I think everybody's got to be in the pool on this one. I think it's imperative for the students, the teachers, the parents to take proactive action and say, look, we're behind, but this is how we can fix it or help fix it. So I guess my question again is, how are we communicating back to the students, not in a negative way, but just say, hey, we're behind the curve here. We need to improve. And these are the programs and the steps and the programs available to help you get where we need you to be. We're here 100%. But again, I'm struggling with the fact that this is just simply a teacher and a school problem. This is a societal problem that we need to let people know what's available out there to help them catch up.
That's a great question, Pete. One thing we did do, in Amherst, we used our ESSER funds to purchase a program called Reading Plus. It's a program that we had used at AMS and at Sauhegan in the past, just with our students who needed intervention and some additional supports. It's a really high quality reading program that actually helps students practice reading comprehension. It gives them eye exercises to practice their tracking to ensure that the eyes are moving fluidly, and really helps to, it's not a speed reading program, but it helps the eyes become more efficient while reading and helps with pacing with reading. And then it also helps with vocabulary. So it's a really strongly research-based and effective program. So we used our ESSER funds to purchase a school-wide license to Reading Plus at AMS, because we felt in looking at some of the impacts, we are seeing impacts in reading scores. So all of the Mont Vernon students in 7th and 8th grade have access to Reading Plus. They do it in the classroom, but they do have, they can use that at home. I'm not sure how much is assigned as homework. One of the challenges I do hear from teachers is that often that there wasn't a lot of or as much homework assigned last year in previous years, and students have kind of lost stamina in completing homework. So that's been a little bit of a challenge for us, but that might be a good way, for us to be communicating out to families and letting them know about some of these resources to have them help encourage their child at home. We did get rid of Dreambox only because we had gotten some feedback from students that they didn't love the program. So Dreambox would be a great practice and a great way to help improve some skills. But there are other math programs, and we had teachers kind of individually using, for the most part, they're no cost programs. So there is some consistency across a grade level, but not consistent across the whole school, like Reading Plus. But I can definitely check in with teachers, and I think that's a great thing for us to be able to communicate out to families what resources we have available for practice at home. And that's a great thing to communicate from Mont Vernon as well as our other schools.
Thank you.
Any other questions or feedback for Christine? Thank you for presenting that.
Yeah.
No, it's a challenge.
It was good to do because I didn't realize until I pulled the data out how the Mont Vernon students were performing.
Okay, did we have anything else on any of the consent agenda items, or is that it? Just briefly before we entertain a motion for that, Kristen and Pete, can you just both state that you are at home alone and that it was
Not feasible.
not feasible for you to attend in person this evening?
Sure. I'm Kristen Clark. I'm home and alone, and it was not feasible for me to attend this evening.
Thank you. Pete?
Yeah, Pete Eckhoff, I am not able to be live in person and not able to be there, and I'm home alone.
Thank you. So I would accept a motion to accept consent agenda items 1 through 11.
Make that motion.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll say.
Okay, we need a roll call.
O'Keefe, yes.
Hinckley, yes.
Lawrence, yes.
Clark, yes.
Eckhoff, yes.
Thank you. That motion passes. Appreciate it. We are up to our principal's report.
All right.
Over to you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Happy December. We have a lot going on here at the school right now. It's exciting in the season here. Last month has been go, go, go. November is a funny month on the calendar, 5-day weeks, 2-day, 3-day, whatever day weeks. But we got a lot done here. And I wanted to start by thanking the board and the SAU for the lunch that we had on our PD day. Thank you very much. Mr. O'Keefe was here, and Mr. Steele, and celebrated the achievements of the past year. And that was much appreciated by the staff, and I want to thank you for that celebration and recognition. On that note, that PD day was a Mont Vernon PD day. So we actually, as a staff here, dedicated that day to work that is important to us, and a really productive day, jam-packed agenda. We talked about our goals, and I know that was a conversation here at the last board meeting. We presented those goals as was presented and talked about here, and had a good conversation at our meeting. And actually, as a result of that, we actually, for example, one of the teachers has a real passion for writing. And as a result of our conversation, she has spearheaded what's going to be a literacy night in the spring, and celebrating, one of the things we're trying to do is just foster a love for reading and foster a love for math. And in the flow of the goals, it goes from the goal to the action steps to the measure. But in both cases, math and literacy, math and reading, we want to foster that love, and that when you see kindergartners learning, and just that vibrant
Curiosity.
thirst they have for curiosity. So as a result of our conversation, there were things like that. Broccoli, you might have seen the bulletin board out there, is sort of a celebration of literacy, but it's a gamey kind of a contest, kind of a thing. We've done a couple of drawings the last couple of days, and students won gift certificates to the book fair. You would have thought they won a trip to Disney World. These kids came down. This girl today was literally jumping around the hallway. She got a book on cats, I think, or volcanoes, I forget, but very exciting. So the conversation around the goals was good. We also dove into the data on NEWA and broke out into different groups, grade level groups, so that they could have conversations about prior year, current year students, as a grade level, the data, and then as individual students, the data. And I also wanted on that note to say that not only are we digging into the data at grade levels and having those meaningful conversations as a grade level, you look at grade 3, grade 2, or what have you, we also then look at individual students. And our RTI, which I've talked about, our RTI model that we now have a nice process that we're working through, which is our multi-tiered system of supports for students. When we flag a student and we see that they are below proficiency or not showing growth, it could be Miss Home, it could be Miss Brown, it could be just a tweak in instruction or support or how we approach that student. But those conversations were happening that day, and it was great to see. We did a couple different rotations with that, so that it was like grade level before, grade level after, and having those meaningful conversations. So it was a good day. Thank you again for that recognition, and I want to thank the staff too. They really dug in for a full day of work on that PD day. I'm going to scatter just a few different things I want to hit here. We had our second, third SOAR assembly in December, or November. And at this one highlighted what students are doing well. And we had just a few different pictures of the hallways or the cafeteria, the NPR or recess or classroom, just students that are soaring, that are showing respect, that are acting safely or what have you. And we were able to illustrate that through the assembly. So that was fun. This is just a broken record, but the mascot, I talked to the PTA yesterday, still on order. Again, supply chain issues. I guess there's a rush on Falcon mascots, but hoping that'll get here before June at this point.
I wouldn't hold my breath.
No, don't hold your breath. We might have to change our mascot by the time this gets done, I don't know. I guess the Falcon is I don't know. We'll see what happens. Right, yeah, the gnome, yeah. Just a couple other notes on community. I think I talked about Operation Pumpkin. It just happened, but it was right around the turn of the report. Just again, want to thank those Hegan students and Mr. Brooks for coming up here and continuing that tradition forward. It was a great day, and then of course the kids got the pumpkins in the afternoon. I've had 2 coffees with the principal. We did that again last week. I'll be honest, it's not a huge rush of attendance at these coffees, but it is an opportunity where folks can drop in, ask questions. I talk about sort of the month that was, the month ahead, and so that's been good. I'm going to try to promote that a little differently. Maybe we'll actually have a coffee, barring COVID numbers increasing, and see if that draws a few more folks in. Have to mention Girls on the Run. I think I had mentioned this last month that the final was coming up, the final race. It happened, and just a big thank you to our coaches, Ms. Millis and the 2 parent coaches, just the dedication, Ms. Wiley and Ms. Blasi, just put a ton of time in, and the kids' faces on that last race, the 5K, was just fantastic. So just really cool and a great accomplishment for those kids. Our Spirit Club went out on their last practice race and cheered them on outside, and we had some staff out there. So it's just real positive thing. Great to see those kids accomplish that. I quickly mentioned MTSS. I just want to hit that for a minute here. So we have a team, our multi-tiered system of supports, and it was RTI that meets weekly. And at this point now, I can happily say we actually have referrals now moving forward through that process. And a student can be referred for academics, for behavior, for any challenges that we're seeing. We want to see data behind that. We want to see that there's something that has been flagged, and then we have a wraparound. We have a team of professionals that look at that. We have our, of course, classroom teachers involved in the process, myself, and so far I think we have a good process in place that will get better over the course of this year. And by next year, we'll launch with the whole process already in place. And Ms. Jennings just came back from her leave and has joined our team. And that's been great. She's a great resource. So it's fun to get that work moving forward and to see that process moving forward. Want to recognize our nurse. Last month, we talked about some of those numbers, and I know we had a conversation about some follow-up on that. We were able to have a follow-up conversation that same week. And actually what we found was there, in terms of, Miss Deppen is a rock star and she's through all of this. This has been, a challenge no one obviously was prepared for necessarily, but Kim's done a great job. In talking about it, we had a couple of positive cases. And when those happen, it's just an overwhelming amount of reporting that has to happen. It's not just one positive case, it's all the trail that happens behind that and conversations that have to happen. So I met with the office staff and we sort of came to an agreement that if there is extra support needed, Mr. Steele had availed some overtime funding and things like that that we could provide. And I'm happy to say, actually, over the last month, and Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't really had to tap into that because our numbers have been stable. They've been steady as far as COVID goes. That doesn't mean Kim isn't busy on a regular basis with the daily stuff. But in terms of that, we haven't had to tap into that. One of our administrative assistants was able to support, again, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but during one of those cases, some of the reporting that happened, she was able to support Kim on that. So it's something we're paying attention to and watching, and we do have those resources available for the administrative assistants if need be. Did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I put together a Google sheet afterwards, and it was great that Tom and Sharon and Jen in the office that I put together, and I kind of accumulated all the information that they would be asked by the Department of Health, because they're getting more, they want more information than what they have originally. So with each positive case, I've done that, and I gave them access. I gave it access to Tom too as well. For any positive case, so when the department does call and they have questions, they can just kind of refer to that instead of me taking the phone call and providing them all the information. So that's been helpful. That's great.
Just two other things I'll mention. We have the Avenue of Lights coming up on Saturday evening. PTA is very busy this week with the book fair, Avenue of Lights. That's 5 to 7. All are welcome. Come on down. It's going to be amazing from what I hear. And we also, yeah, no power outage.
We have that giant generator. We can have a power.
That's
I know, right?
Good.
Don't even say it.
We're good. And I also, just a follow-up thing, we had talked about when we had our stipend conversation recently, I mentioned chorus was going to move forward, and we actually have signups coming up for our chorus. So I'm excited about that. Ms. Ward, our music teacher, is getting that ball rolling. So next week, we're going to start signups for chorus.
And Pete has his hand up when we're ready for questions. I just didn't want to forget. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So Pete, did you want to take questions on?
Okay. Yeah, no, I just want to comment. Thanks to Tom and for the report. It's really good. I just want to make sure that, and you guys are doing a great job, Tom and Kristen. I just want to make sure that you have the resources you need for the volume of cases that you're dealing with on a daily basis, because every indicator that I've seen, and you folks are more versed in it than I am, especially Kristen, this is not going away. So I want to make sure that you have the resources to handle the caseload, especially now that we're headed into the winter season, that we're going to have the cold, the flu, and everything else layered onto what we're dealing with. And I just want to make sure that we're giving you what you need, and that you're not afraid to raise your hand and say, I need help, because I think we're headed to a critical stage here through the next 4 to 5 months. That I just want to make sure that you've got what you need from us as a school board.
Yeah, so I think, and Kim, feel free to jump in on this. I mean, as far as the follow-up conversation we had from last month, it is hard to predict. And if the numbers were to blow up on us, I think if we needed to reach out for support, I feel like, Mr. Steele and the SAU certainly is aware of sort of like the urgency there if that comes up. I think right now we have a pretty good plan in place. Kim mentioned the spreadsheet, which is sort of, I mean, it's tracking our numbers, but it's also tracking our sort of tracking our resources or the need that we have there. And we'll follow the trends, we'll just continue to follow those numbers and see where we are. And I think I said, both of our administrative assistants are willing and able to jump in. I think sometimes what happens is Kim gets overwhelmed with the amount of the tracking and the calls and being put on hold and then having to call back or whatever. In the meantime, there's live students coming into the office, so it's this two worlds colliding. So I think as an office staff, we can take some of that load off if we get into this crunch of numbers increasing and reporting and so on, and continue to watch it.
And I think we
Thank
have a
you,
good-
and I appreciate the support.
I think we
Thank
have
you.
a good intermediate plan with the office staff supporting, and if numbers really increased and things got out of hand, we'd have to look to bring in the sub nurse to help and
Yeah.
support, whether that's full day or half day, if it's for a week or for 2 weeks or whatever the situation is. I know sub nurses are always a little challenging to find. We do have a list of nurses that are willing to sub for us, but that is something that I think we would have to look to as a next step if for some reason. And again, we can certainly put our heads together and think of creative ideas to help meet your
Yeah,
needs.
I know we've had these conversations with Steve Chamberlain, and we did last year with
Mhm.
Adam as well,
Yeah.
and the nurses met with him weekly. But yeah, we really don't have that many subs. We have one.
So what about like reaching out to Amherst Rescue or Milford Ambulance to say, hey, can we get maybe an EMT to come up for a day? We'll
Yeah.
pay them a couple $100.
I know Steve Chamberlain was looking into an organization, to sign on as needed, because I know some schools do that. So I know he was checking into some of those aspects.
Because I think that would have to, we would have to solicit them to do that, because just putting that on our website, no one will find that, because
Right,
those positions just don't exist anywhere. But
right,
if we proactively reach out, hey, Amherst Rescue, we're looking for maybe 1 or 2 days a week, if an EMT is willing to come up, a couple hours a day, maybe 2 hours a day on Monday through Thursday, or whatever day is the most busiest for you,
right.
to have that type of support for somebody that here to sit down, they're wearing PPE and take a temperature and at least help you through that as things get busier.
Right, yeah, I mean,
So-
as of right now, I have to say it has been busy, and it's been district-wide.
Yeah.
We've talked to the other nurses in the other district, it's been an issue for the last, since COVID started. It's been very trying, and even, it's a matter of just juggling,
Yeah.
because most of it is we're policing now. Who comes in the door, who needs to go out, who, because any symptom. So, I mean, literally, there's thousands throughout the district. I have hundreds here that I'm tracking that aren't isolation, that aren't quarantine, that are just symptomatic, that are, when can they come back? When do they have that negative test?
So we can ask our superintendent to reach out to the Department of Health to see if we get a special rule passed or adopted by the commissioner to say, we can allow these people to come in and not serve as a nurse, but to support a nurse during the day through this influx, and especially as we head through the spring. You think that would be helpful?
I don't know how that would look or what that would look like, because it truly is a matter of us kind of, we need that negative test before that student can get back in this building. And sometimes that doesn't go over well with the community, unfortunately.
Well,
I understand that.
I apologize. I'm referring to support for you in the office, not
Yeah.
once the kids leave. So getting that, like, there's got to be some rules about an EMT actually serving in your office during the day. They're not a
Right.
nurse, they can't do it,
Yeah,
but working through the commissioner's office to say, hey, on an emergency basis, is there anything that we can do to
right,
just
that
offer?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe the only thing that I always ever thought about was the whole confidentiality. We have the thing, having somebody come in to quote volunteer. And then.
We would
have
pay
access
them,
to
so
this
we would-
That's, we would
information.
have to make them a sub, and all of our substitutes sign a confidentiality
Yeah.
agreement.
Yeah, that
so
would be
no.
the main concern.
Like that, Kim, I think, I'm just trying to think out of the box to get you support
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
quickest fashion and that we could possibly think of.
Right.
And I think just knowing a lot of those people in that universe, I think you would get some people that would be willing to do that. I mean, they wouldn't be up here full time,
No.
but a couple hours a day and like just knowing their passion for it, I think that could be a really good mechanism to get you support, so, and fast.
Well, I will certainly keep Tom posted as of now. We've been able to manage. So, but I don't know, with flu season and the winter coming and the cases going up, we'll see what happens.
Cool.
So, but I
I'll keep you
appreciate it.
And we have 2 hands raised, both Chris
Kristen, did you have a comment, question?
Yeah, and I'm just kind of wondering what the recommendations are or our process with handling what's going to be a big influx in the home tests, the home rapid tests. Like, I know that the false positive rate is extremely low, but the false negative rate is error rate is very high. How is that factoring into our process with students being out of school and going back to school? What are the recommendations around that? If you can speak to that, Mrs. Steppen.
Yeah, so if I heard you correctly, Kristen, we do accept home tests now. We're told to accept those, and even the state said that they should be accurate. The only issue could possibly be is it being used correctly? Is it different, multifaceted things that could go wrong? Did they do it right? Did they do the right time amount? Did they do the right amount of solution on? Did they do all this correctly? So that's always an issue, but we are taking what they're giving us. We are asking for a photo of those home tests, and we are asking that they specifically write the student's name and the date on it, and give us that copy. And as long as we have that, photocopy of it, then they are okay to return as long as the things are improving. They don't have to be gone. They're improving. But one of the concerns, and I don't, this really probably isn't a concern for the board, but with these home tests, it's just a concern about the numbers being out there and what the actual numbers are. Because all these positive tests are supposed to be reported to the state, and if people at home are doing these positive tests, they're not always reporting. So what are the real numbers out there?
Thank you. I know you had to answer some questions for me earlier this week about that exact issue of a positive test not being reported, and I really appreciate your work on that.
Oh, no problem. Anytime. Yeah.
Pete?
Thank you. I don't want to belabor this, but I think it's important that we, to Steve's point, continue to recruit either on a per diem and maybe even a volunteer basis to get some staffing support on the clerical side for Kristen and, take some of that pressure off. I know that, Tom mentioned about the office staff being supportive, which is great, but who knows, maybe we have somebody in the community that would be willing to donate 6 hours a week to go up and work through the clerical part of it, phone calls, paperwork, whatever, non-medical facing, technology needed, but has the clerical skill set that would provide relief for that situation. Because again, I don't think this is going to go away, and we've got to be proactive. So I would hope that somehow we can recruit that, either social media or whatever the mechanism is, but I think it's really critically important.
Yeah, and I would say I appreciate that, because you're right about the whole clerical thing. Because every student that walks through my door, I document on it. It's a medical record is what it is. So I have all those documentations there. But I have to say what's been extremely helpful, which on some of those late starts in the PD day, we have given me the time to get caught up on all my paperwork, which was extremely helpful that last PD day.
Great.
So.
Great. Any other questions or comments?
Just starting off real fast with the principal's report, when we've got the census, is there a way that we can just add the month-to-month column there? So we can start September, October, November, December would have updated December numbers, and then January, of course, would be blank this month.
Yep.
That would be awesome, just so we can see if there's any type of pattern to kids moving in or moving out.
Yeah.
Then the second one with the New Boston Grange, making that awesome donation on a 20-year basis. To be blunt, I don't remember my kids getting them, but that doesn't mean they didn't. Is there a way that we can invite them to maybe one of your SOAR events to say, like, this is an example of community giving back, and just so we can really properly recognize them in a more formal way?
Absolutely. It's a great idea. And that is actually one of the, because of COVID, they usually would actually come in and bring the dictionaries to them. What I understand traditionally would bring them in, and they just weren't comfortable coming in, and they couldn't actually. So, but that's one of the goals of the SOAR assemblies, is to have community come in and do that. So it's a great idea. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yep.
Then the next thing was our next update. And I'm sure you probably have this mapped out for the entire year. Can we get an update from Spanish and the arts and the music program sort of on the list at some point soon. I just want to see how that's going. I mean, those people are all new to us.
Yeah.
And I kind of love to sort of get some insight in terms of what we're doing from that perspective. And then, where did it health? And I'm excited to see to the math specialist, the focus on the math house is coming back. So it looks like that is starting based on the 8th, 15th, and the 22nd. Those are going to be afternoon sessions, or is that going to be during the day? Like the school day?
Those are during the day.
Okay.
And,
Because it said taking place over Zoom, so I just want to understand what that
Oh,
was.
that was in the evening.
Okay, thank you.
oh,
With Charlene, it was not the
Just the
houses, it's an extension from that, but it's like an enrichment.
oh, the
kind of
enrichment thing.
experience
Yeah,
for
no, that's
students.
Yeah, right, that's after school.
Mhm.
And so do we need to approve something like that to make sure that that's done in the enrichment program?
She is a curriculum coordinator and she felt strongly that that was part of her bigger picture school-based work.
Okay.
And we made sure that the focus was narrow. We didn't want her to feel that she wasn't entitled to an enrichment stipend if it was an after-school ongoing piece. And she felt that doing like 2 Zoom sessions where she can invite students and have them be able to join from home at night would be a really neat experience and fun. She really enjoyed being able to offer instruction remotely last year. She really felt like she learned so much. And she just wanted to kind of recreate that and do that with students.
Cool.
So
Thank you to her, and she's watching at home. Thank you. If you can express that, Kim. It's always awesome when you come up with that out of the box. And then the last thing I just wanted to comment on real fast. Thank you to the good old Mont Vernon Police Department for Chief Slavin serving lunch. I've heard feedback directly from kids' parents about how awesome that is, and continue to work, and maybe someone else will show up one day too.
My kid loves it. Loves it.
Yeah, he's been coming in every Monday, serving lunch, so it's great.
Supposed to come in tomorrow. Awesome. That's all I have.
and
Was there
he has
something-
his hand up too.
Okay, was there something that you wanted other than the art and the Spanish update that's in here?
The specials piece was just sooner than later, because I kind of want to get some idea of what we're doing in that regard. I want to see how difficult it is up on the stage. Like, I just want to get some insight
the
from those
coordination
guys.
part. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Thanks.
Thank you.
Pete?
Thank you. Real quick, I appreciate the update on the absences for faculty. I was just wondering if you could put that in a spreadsheet similar to your attendance, so that month by month, we know how many teachers' absences we're seeing.
And I do want
Give
to
us an
clarify,
idea.
that's all staff, including food service, custodial, office, and teaching staff.
I guess I would prefer to see it as teacher and then all other.
We'll check with Adam. I know that was kind of intentional just because of the small size of the rest of the
Yep.
support staff, whether it's paraprofessionals, office, and so on. So we
Yep.
were we just wanted to keep confidentiality too with such
So-
a small.
No,
Sorry for you.
No, I got it. I also noticed that the Amherst Middle School report showed 212 in September, but no numbers for October, November. So I think it's important that we keep tracking that from a holistic perspective, I guess.
Thanks, Pete. Did you have anything else?
I was just gonna say, I'm going back a couple of years, but the report that we used to get was a random sequence of numbers for individuals between our professional and our non-professional staff. And then the number of absences correlated to those over the course of a quarter or a month, was it, Sarah?
Yeah.
Was it a month or a quarter?
I think it was
I
quarterly.
think it was quarterly.
So what it did is
Yeah,
it was impossible to figure it out because it was just completely random. It was just a number. But it gave us insight in terms of instructional time that's being missed out and pushing a substitute in, which I know are really tough right now to get. And I'm assuming, are we mixing classes when someone calls out sick? right
We haven't
now?
had to do that.
Okay.
We haven't had to do that yet.
We would if we had to. We always try not to do that. I think one day Sarah had a meeting at the middle school and we combined classes for a few hours.
That might have
Or did we end
happened.
up
Yeah,
getting
that might
this
have
up?
happened once,
But
for like an hour or
Mackenzie,
two.
teaches both classes already, so, that was a pretty easy. I think that was the
Yeah.
only time we did. We've been okay with subs because we haven't had a huge number of teacher absences.
I will say, there have been times we've had to use paras
Mhm.
in a role as a sub, which is it's not a perfect solution, because now somebody like Zach or someone else has to provide that support in another way, so.
I just think that'd be an easier way to get what Mr. Eckhoff's trying to accomplish, is just trying to get an understanding of instructional time loss, because no offense to any of our non-professional staff, like, it's not the same when, a sixth grade teacher's out for 6 weeks. Like, there's different things that we as a board probably need to be made aware of, versus maybe a custodian being out per se. So, like, just that type of knowledge and depth, but maintaining the confidentiality of our employees, I think would go a long way.
Right, and I think we used to share that in non-public, even
We
though
did.
it was de-identified, I think we still
And
shared it.
We
in
gave it
non-public.
right back, and
Yeah.
we never took it.
Exactly.
Let me connect with Adam
Okay.
on that.
Thank you. Any other feedback for our principal? I'm going to say thank you. We appreciate the report. It is always great to see the classroom updates and the specialist updates. It's nice to just get a snapshot of what's happening in the classroom. For those of us that don't have kids here anymore, it's good to get a feeling for the good work that happens here. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Great job.
And Sarah, before we go into the budget piece, this is more for Christine. Christine, is there a way maybe in January, February, that we can get an update on what our tuition agreement's going to do between our transition? Because I know we talked about that 2 months ago. I know I brought it up last month, but I just want to make sure it's not forgotten about how we're supposed to be integrating our sixth grade teachers into the curriculum over there, getting that cross pollination per se. Because looking at the test results that we saw there, I just want to get the stuff up and running, and I really want to have the approach. I just don't want to find out in May, things got busy.
Right.
We just joined a random class. Like, I want structure to that. From my perspective, want is a horrible word, but I would like to see structure to that, and just making sure that's still on the radar and getting a plan just presented to us maybe January, February.
Okay.
So what exactly, I'll put it on the.
So to see the transition in accordance with our tuition agreement between the joint classes and PE, actually PD between our sixth grade teachers and the Amherst Middle School teachers, and that joint class that's required as part of the contract to integrate some of those kids.
And we already did some professional development with sixth grade. We did some summer professional development. I know Steve did a kind of brief overview, but I think it might be helpful too if he and I collaborate on that to present a kind of transition update for sixth grade. Because there was some summer work that, again, teachers aren't required to attend, that summer work. It's not within their contract, it's outside of their contract, but I know Dawn did participate in that sixth grade. It was a humanities, I believe it was even 2 days, if I'm remembering correctly off the top of my head. And she worked closely, I pushed into that and, helped to support that work as well. So that was really rich professional development where we were able to get those, the humanities teachers together and go over both English and social studies. So I'm happy to share that with you. And then we also did have some connections happening on some of our in-service days as well already. We're happy to do additional if needed, but I think sharing out the specific details of that might be.
So I mean, the whole point of that was to avoid what happened with our Spanish program, right? Our Spanish program, we were under the impression was doing really well, and then you find out it wasn't integrating at all. The kids were starting completely over from scratch. They went through 6 years of Spanish here, and then they're like, oh, they know nothing, you have to start over. Making sure that our sixth grade teachers are at least on the same page from a curriculum standpoint, as well as, hey, what are you doing over there that's working? Or what are we doing here that's working? Cross-pollinating there, and so it's creating a better transition.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'll check in with
So
Steve.
I'll
on that.
add that and I'll tag you on it. You'll know exactly what it is.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sending agendas tomorrow, so. perfect timing. Okay. Thank you. Okay, we are up to our budget finalization.
All right.
Miss Basie,
Yes.
bring us home.
Okay. So Christine is.
Yeah, I
going
can
to-
share your presentation on the
Yep.
Zoom so
Yep.
that our Zoom participants.
Yeah,
can
so I
see.
did create a updated budget presentation for you to help walk us through where we are or where we were and where we hopefully land.
Is that linked on the Trello or? It is not on Trello, but I can certainly put it there. And
Do you want me to
Christine
put it
is-
there?
Yeah, that'd be great. And she's sharing it on Zoom. Just let me know when it's up.
Oh, you're okay if I make a school administrative unit 39 link?
Mhm.
And then put that in Trello?
Yep.
I'll put it in the December 2nd minutes. I'll add an attachment. If that's
Okay, thank
okay.
you. Great.
It should be there now.
And are you sharing it on Zoom as well? Yes. Okay. Okay, great. Just let me know when you all see the title page.
We need the TV to be like virtual. And I'd like to connect to that wire. So I have too many wires connected to my computer right now and too far away.
Where did you add it?
It should be in the December 2nd card for
Oh,
the
okay.
Mont Vernon, the one all the way on the left.
Yes,
Sorry.
yes. No, I got it now. Thank you. You guys all set? Yes. Okay, great. So just to go to the second page, just to briefly go over the budget review process. So the board was presented with the superintendent's proposed budget on the 14th of October. From the 15th to the 30th, we had budget review meetings and questions were submitted. On 11/4, we had a school board meeting where there was a budget review. This evening, we'll be presenting you with a revised budget and looking for the board to move the budget warrant article and default to public hearing. Your public hearing is scheduled for January 13th. Deliberative is scheduled for February 9th, and district voting is March 8th. So this just provides a summary of the changes that have taken place after the 1014 presentation. The items in black were discussed at the last board meeting.
He is locked out.
So that was the net tuition reduction, the replacement furniture, phase 1 being moved to be funded from the unassigned fund balance if available. There were a few salary adjustments for the math interventionist due to increased education level. There was a adjustment to the food service worker and a slight adjustment to the treasurer salary amount. We had received the Primex not to exceed rates for workers' comp, unemployment comp, and property and liability. And there were some other small miscellaneous corrections and adjustments. So since the last board meeting, the SAU board did approve the SAU budget. So the apportionment to Mont Vernon increased by $2,942. The next item is a fuel cap cost projection that I'm proposing the board consider. The contract with the bus company allows for a payment for fuel up to a certain dollar amount. If it goes beyond that, then we have to pay for that fuel cost. So we're already starting to see increases in that cost. So this is a projection based on what I've seen over the past month. So I'm proposing to add $3,000 to make sure that we have enough money in the budget for next year in case we have similar gas prices. The next change is the restoration of days to the administrative assistant. Initially, the thought was that we would be able to reduce some of the days for one of the administrative assistants. However, in working with Tom and Christine, that recommendation was changed to put the current days back. And I think listening to the conversation this evening about clerical duties being necessary and work being done to support the nurse's office, I think there's an even stronger case for making sure that we keep those days intact. The next item, this actually came from the food service director at Sauhegan, who made a recommendation that in the past, for safety purposes, there was a
a knife sharpening service for the kitchen, and also a recommendation to purchase non-slip shoes for staff. So I'm bringing that recommendation to this board as well to consider. So that's a $600 increase. And then the last item, we hope that there's no need to transfer funds from the general fund to food service, but we should have $1 in there just in case. I noticed in last year's budget that it was put in a different account, so I'm making sure that we have it in the correct account for FY23. So all of those changes result in a net reduction of $60,791.
Pete has raised his hand.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay.
and I know you can't see it, so I'm sorry. It's a little
Okay.
awkward. I apologize.
Thank you.
Interrupting.
Pete, did you have a question for Amy?
Yeah, just a question and comment. And you got the numbers beyond what you showed, but the fuel cap cost projection to me seems really light. Given where we are with the current circumstances, I don't know where that's going, but three grand seems really, really light. I'd rather, and I don't have a number for you, but that one is just, that's scary to me.
So I think the bus company is responsible for up to like $2.75 per gallon or
57. Yeah.
$2.57.
Yep, so it's beyond 257. So this is an increase over, and then that's apportioned out to the 3 districts.
You're only, yeah, because it's,
Gotcha.
you have the 3 buses.
Yeah.
But then the amount of gallons for each route for the Mont Vernon routes,
Yeah.
obviously, because you have 2 sets of routes.
So I was trying to be
Okay.
conservative, but certainly if the board thinks that you would like to budget more, then we can do that.
Okay, pardon the pun, but you've done your homework, so I appreciate that.
Yeah. I know, did you?
I did it based on the monthly for October. Because September didn't make sense, right? So, and I added a bit for field trips. So,
Do you think it's enough as a cushion or?
I mean, it seems to be okay.
Okay.
It's probably not extra.
No.
Or a lot extra,
No.
but.
Okay, yeah. All right, so moving on, just an executive summary. I noticed in your previous presentations, you liked to look at things excluding the Warren article. So I did that in this first batch of numbers. So the change from the FY23 proposed to the FY22 operating is 13,499, which is a 0.23% increase. The change from the FY22 default to the FY22 operating is a 1.19% decrease, or 70,441. And the difference between the FY23 default and FY23 proposed is 83,940, or a 1.4% increase. And those all exclude the special warrant article. And including the warrant article, so if you're looking strictly at the FY23 proposed to the FY22, or the FY23 proposed to the FY22, it's a 0.62% decrease, or 36,501, because you're including that 50,000. So the next slide just shows that comparison of a budget to budget difference, and then the warrant article to warrant article. So the total is 13,499.
And Pete has his hand.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Pete.
I'm sorry, going to backtrack on the fuel thing. So I know we're protected to, what did you say, 257?
Yeah.
On increase, but I guess my question is, what if the wheels fall off on this and they come to us and say, we can't operate given the current economic situation? Are we fully protected against any abnormal cost increases to fuel from the bus service? I mean, obviously we want our kids to get to school And obviously, we want to be a good business partner with our school provider and our bus, provider. But I guess my concern is with the way things are trending, are we covered sufficiently with the current situation?
So they pay the first $2.57 per gallon. We pay any cost above that. So if it's $3.50 a gallon right now for diesel, we're paying $1 a gallon for any, and buses eat gas. So for up the hill too, for any, and I don't know how many gallons they use a day. So we certainly could, if the board wanted, to add more, and I don't know if you feel like we could get up to $5 a gallon next year, and that's our high point, and that's what we budget for, we would need to add to that. And we have some protections in there, but we've, in our contract, if something happened with the bus company, we do have some protections there. But again, if the company folds, the company folds. But they actually are pretty protected. It's the way the contract is written. There are some things that are in there that are very much to our favor. At any point, we can reduce buses by that day, and we don't pay for that bus, which is really great for us. But gas prices were kind of taking a little bit of the ownership of the fluctuation in gas prices on the other side with that contract. So it wouldn't be terrible to put more in, but it's up to the board.
Amy, can I ask you a favor? Can you just shoot me a link to our budget? It's crashed on my thing. You should have that email, that'd be awesome.
Yep.
Thank you for the explanation. I have I think you sense my concerns, but I don't want to overreact, but I don't want to get caught.
Well, and Mont Vernon is a small budget. So when we're talking about things that, we're not, we never want to overestimate and inflate and have, a big impact on taxpayers, but we also don't want to underestimate and then have to freeze our budget and take money from other places to be able to pay for fuel for our school buses.
Right.
So there is an important balance there.
Do we think it's reasonable to ask Amy to take a slightly deeper dive on that and go with a less conservative number?
I have to be honest with you, I'm a little concerned about what I'm seeing is a much higher difference between our default and our proposed budget. So I thought we were down to roughly around 24,000, and it seems to have jumped up between our last meeting and tonight. I'm just trying to remember how that happened. Because we were pretty close, and now all of a sudden we're looking at a 1.2% increase. And if you remember, our goal was to try to be as close to default as possible, but still giving the community an option.
So between default and proposed, when presented, it was 1.8%. It was 104,777. So we've gone down.
Yeah, but we were down to like 24 last month. So what went in there to increase it? Because we were talking about using ESSER funds to use towards some of the project money around curriculum.
Yep, so we'll get to that.
Okay.
But I don't know if we were ever down. The 24 was between proposed and FY22. But the difference between the default and the proposed when presented was 104. Do you want me to, I can share the original presentation?
Yeah, unfortunately, my laptop's at home. That's why it's.
That's okay.
not,
I can share that with you. All right, so the default calculation, which is moving from the FY22 adopted to the default, is a decrease in 120,441, and that's just because we're showing the 50,000 decrease from the warrant article.
My concern is that this year, out of all years, asking for that type of increase is going to be really tough in this community. And if we see a budget fail, then we're gonna have to worry about our busing contract, because it's not allowed to be included in the default budget, which means we're gonna have sizable and significant cuts somewhere to cover that. So I don't know if we're gonna be able to finalize this tonight, because I think we've got some wood to cut in terms of actually really examining and trying to turn that back.
So
Do you want to present and then we, you give us direction on, we do have a little bit of information to share on the curriculum piece and ESSER. And Adam joined us. So we're happy to share that and then kind of look at some of those pieces to look at how we can reduce the difference between those.
Yeah. All right, so do you want proposed budget?
Yeah, proposed
Yeah, so
budget cuts.
yeah, so this shows the difference between the default and the proposed, which is the 1.4%.
I mean, is there a way that we could project, is that?
I would have to sit over there, which
Okay.
Or can
I
you send it to
can,
Tom
or-
and Tom can plug
I can
in?
sit over there.
I can send it
Just
to
know
Tom.
Amy's doing all the stuff, so I'd love to see, like what you're saying, looking at it, I just want to be able to see the same thing. that you're-
Tom, I'll share
That'd be
the
awesome.
presentation with you and if you can,
Yep.
I just sent it over Slack. And if you don't mind
Yep.
plugging in. And while he's doing that, if you're okay, I'm happy to provide the update around the classroom supplies and materials, which is still showing as an increase here. So I did reach out to the New Hampshire Department of Education, and they did advise me that it should be permissible for us to remove that item from our budget, the new math materials, the $15,000 in new math materials, remove it from our budget and put it in the ESSER grant. I have to formally do that. I know Katie worked on budget lines and I have something else that I have to submit in addition to that grant. So hopefully we'll have approval for that soon. They will only ever over email give you guidance. They'll never give you an approval because that approval has to come through the actual activity that you're writing in the grant and then submitting to them. So Amy and I thought, oh, do we keep it in, pull out? What do? We don't yet have approval. So timeline was a little bit compressed for us to get, both information from the DOE as well as get it, into our grant and get the grant approved all in time. So we're ready to submit our grant and, hopefully would get turnover pretty quickly of that grant and approval so that we can pull it out of our budget. So we anticipate getting that. We just don't have that yet. ESSER is, there's not a supplanting issue in ESSER. So in most of our grants, we can't take something out of our budget and put it in the grant because ESSER is a grant that allows you to backdate, essentially. That means supplanting isn't an issue and you can actually supplant as long as what we're doing helps to support our students and respond to COVID. And we are responding to COVID, our disrupted learning and some holes and gaps in mathematical knowledge and understanding by implementing a new program. So they felt strongly that that it would be an approvable activity. We just hesitated pulling it out until we had official approval through the grant writing process. So we hope to have that soon and be able to pull that piece out, which will help. It is $15,000. I'm not sure where some of the other classroom supplies and materials that didn't end up in default. I have to look really deeply at that for what that might be to get that amount down. And we certainly can look back at.
And so where is that default on the busing side of things that included in what you've got documented? So because we can't include that in the default, so how is that accounted for, the difference between the default and the proposed?
Right here, maybe. Yes.
Because in the slide there, you've got
so-
technology, you've got
Yep.
other in there, and other is right there, everything else.
Transportation. Yeah, transportation.
So the 33,000, but is that included in the other? Hold on, please forgive me, I'm trying.
That's okay.
Multiple windows. This one, deck, slide number 7. I was just wondering where that was. So default's clearly not going to include that. It's the proposed budget calculation 2023 default. And then your
And Amy's checking on transportation, and but Pete does have his hand raised.
sorry.
So it's whenever, whenever you're ready.
Pete, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, thank you. I would like to agree but disagree with Mr. O'Keefe, and I think 1.4 is a nice number or percentage. I agree with him 100%. If we can keep, whittle or cut or find funding or whatever the phrase is to get it lower, that's great. But given the success of our school and what we've delivered for results academically, and the conservative nature of our board and the budgets we've delivered year over year, I'm not sure 1.4 is all that bad. I understand Steve's concern that, I guess there's another, round of incredible increases coming from, the town budget, and I got it. But I'm not sure that we need to pare this down to the bare bones. Again, I'm all in for, I'm Mr. Frugal. Cut, pare, make funding available for certain aspects of the budget. But I applaud the 1.4%. Would I be happy with 0.5? Would I be happy with 0.0? Absolutely. But that's my opinion.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Christine, for letting me know when Pete's hand is raised. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So yeah, I think there's just, we kind of jumped around a bit, but
So and it might be me that's not clear, so I apologize. Did we want to look at the slide that shows the difference between, like, what makes up the difference between the proposed and the default? So what would fall out if we were in default to, because that's the number you're trying to reduce. So if we can look at that slide, I think that might be most helpful on top
Was
of
that
the
slide
increases.
7? So are you
Slide
saying,
7.
are you
Slide
saying,
7.
Stephen, that you think that something's missing from this slide?
Well, my fear is this. I respectfully disagree with Mr. Eckhoff. I don't think this community can absorb a 1.4% increase this year, not with all the stuff that's going to be coming at town meeting this year. We're going to be proposing a library, we're going to be proposing a bunch of building proposals. There's zero tolerance for a big increase or any increase in our school budget. You've seen a lot of the communication from our community talking about how we are now $20 out of the $28 per thousand tax rate. So we have to do whatever we possibly can to keep that budget as lean as we possibly can. Now, I know we have to give our community an option, but there's got to be something that we can do to reduce or further reduce that $83,000 increase over the default. And the stuff that's up on the screen, I understand it was articulated extremely well during our budget process, especially through my questions about what it was going towards. We just need to identify other avenues or other paths to see if we could pare some of that back. And seeing the difference between the two, right? You take a look at the default, like I don't see transportation actually listed as a plus in this column to show the difference between this and the default budget where we show the negative 33,000 on the other screen. Because is that number like right there, that's the default calculation, 5824,310. But where's transportation added on the other in terms of the difference between the two?
yeah, some of it is the special ed transportation also that is legally required. So that's probably what that is. But I mean, I can certainly do an analysis of
So
that.
this was a
and
big
see
issue
if-
last year because that was the first year that we weren't able to account for transportation in the default budget. So,
The increase,
yes.
right?
And so that $38,000 item on this slide, we show being removed from our proposed budget. I'm not reading that.
I
correctly.
believe
We started off
it's-
with the adopted budget from last year.
Right.
$33,000 the reduction. for special ed costs for students being sent out of district, I'm assuming.
I believe so.
But where are we accounting for the actual bus contract for increases in that?
I don't think there's a huge difference.
Okay, because that can't be included in the default budget. It has to go in the proposed budget, right?
The transportation is in the default, but any increase from this year to next year would need to go in the default, and it's the increase between the two, right? Is that what you're?
Yeah, so last year, we were specifically told, keep me honest,
Mhm.
that transportation cannot be included in the default. And there was a
Right.
state rule, it had to
We
go
were
into the
shocked.
proposed.
Right,
So if the
because we have a
proposed-
contract, it's
Yeah,
contractual.
it's contractual.
If the proposed fails, then we need to make
Mhm.
cuts to cover that difference.
Yes.
And so I don't see that represented in here. And I just want to make sure that we're clear in terms of how much we need to actually dive deeper into.
So, yeah, so part of the issue is last year, and now this is coming back to me, but I spoke to our finance director, and it looks like for some reason, the bus contract amount for the middle school was over budgeted. So that it's the total between the elementary and the middle is for FY '22 is greater than the total for elementary and middle for FY '23.
So there's a reduction there
There
in overall
is.
cost, and that's why it's not accounted for.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even though there might be an increase from this year to next year in actual transportation costs because it was budgeted.
And I
higher
remember
last
specifically
year.
asking the finance director why that amount was that, and she wasn't able to answer me.
But the other thing that I'm hearing is that that total difference right now, that 83,940 could potentially be reduced by 15,000.
Yes.
Okay,
I'm pretty confident in that. We just hadn't done it yet because we didn't have official approval. The other, I'd like to speak to the technology piece too. Tom, if you could move to the next slide. There's a big increase in technology. It's because our tech lines were zeroed out last year. So we have no budget this year for technology. We are using our ESSER funds to purchase laptops that died early due to COVID. So we're able to refresh our laptops. Certainly, we're only looking at 28 laptops, I think, that we felt died a little bit early, but we had no tech budget for this year. All those lines were zeroed out.
We had a
and
high
last year's-
damage rate with our technology coming back from students' homes, higher than
Yes.
really any of our other districts, correct?
I don't know if it's higher than our other districts. That's a good question. I don't, it didn't stand out to me when I had checked in with the schools on their damage rate. They have so many more students. Percentage wise, I didn't figure that number out. I certainly can. But it was 28 laptops, if I'm remembering correctly off the top of my head, that were damaged and not fixable or died early. But our laptops have been heavily used. So it's a concern moving forward if we're not able, we're really just replacing what was broken. Typically, we buy close to 2 class sets of laptops every year to replace, as they move up with our 5-year replacement plan. So we're getting behind in that 5-year replacement plan with zero, funding in our tech line. So I worry about us creating kind of a hole in that replacement cycle. So I would worry about cutting technology too much. But again, there's always that balance. If we need to shave a little bit off that to bring our number down to make our budget, more tolerable for taxpayers, then we definitely need to shave a little bit off of that. That number looks so big because it's going from 0 to 50,000.
and there's no way to use ESSER funds for that, considering it was a COVID impact.
So we are using ESSER funds for the 28 laptops that were damaged, but I'm not sure, and I could look more deeply into it. It's a little bit of a stretch, but we definitely can use it because those 28 laptops were 100% broken because they were home and overused, and they broke earlier than they should have. But for us to try to refresh an entire grade level of computers, I worried it was a little outside the intent of those funds. We could possibly, and again, I can check with the New Hampshire Department of Education. We could, part of ESSER can be used to like proactively respond. So if we say we anticipate the possible need to be able to go remote in the future with different variants coming out and us needing a greater number of laptops, we could possibly use our ESSER funds. It felt like a little bit of a stretch to me, but I'm happy to inquire to see if we'd be able to purchase more than just the replacement laptops. And Pete has his hand.
Pete, go
Yeah,
ahead.
thanks. I just wanted to tag along on Sarah's comment and, is there funding available from the COVID situation for replacement computers and technology? That's all. And are we tapping into every resource that's available? Is that something that, Brian can delve into and figure out if there's other avenues to get us funding for computer replacement? That's all. Thank you.
We do also have Title IV funding, which is well-rounded education. We've used that for robotics in the past, not the PTA robotics program, we had a little robotics summer program that we ran one year. That is for well-rounded education, which includes technology. One thing that we were speaking about, we have iPads. So Tom and I have been working with Edmundo on this. We have iPads that are so old, the operating system can no longer be updated, which means a lot of the apps don't use, so it can't update. So Tom and I were talking about using that Title IV funding to purchase, to run like an after-school robotics club, maybe even to enhance our own technology program. We have the dot and dash robots, the coding robots, but we were using our older iPads. We never purchased iPads with the funding that we used for those robots. I'm pretty sure we should be able to get approval for those iPads and to be able to kind of replace our older iPads and tie it in with that grant funding. So we are exploring that, at least for the iPads, which I think will help. That was really a pretty strong need this year, not even a planned need for next year. So, I'm happy to work with Brian too, to really look at what was planned for next year. And some of those lines we do need to fund because, if a projector breaks, we want a teacher to still be able to have a projector. So some funding really needs to be in there, and we were at zero. So we can go back and look at how do we balance both some grant funds. I can check in with the DOE on further utilizing ESSER funds to help prepare for any other future, COVID challenges that we might experience and expand out our number of laptops as well. So I can check to see if that's permissible and try to reduce this tech line.
Okay. The one thing that I just want to clarify with you is that I thought you said that number, that $50,000 number, in essence was replacing what was broken, but then I heard you say that there are ESSER funds being used for that.
Yes.
So what is that?
The 50,000 is to get us back on track for a 5-year
For the 5-year
replacement plan.
Okay. Okay.
So it is for, there's probably and I'd have to dig deeply. I didn't budget these, Brian did, but I'm familiar.
Thank you.
There's probably a projector or two in that. And then if I had to guess, there's probably at least 30 laptops in there, but there might be even more to catch us up from
So
us.
that's in there, Amy, because you and I looked at that.
Yeah.
What slide was that on? What page of the budget worksheet? Is it on budget submissions?
Yeah. Smart boards, projectors,
iPads that are out of date.
USB headphones. Oh, it's
37.
Yes, there's 2,000 there for a smart board.
Yeah.
There's $1,800 for a projector.
That's what.
Mhm.
And then repair parts, $2,500, live streaming stipend, $800. What's that for?
live streaming stipend?
Yeah. I think we
Is
can
that
say-
the Mont Vernon portion at the SAU board meetings for board live streaming?
No, that would be a part of the apportionment from the SAU
Yeah, you're
office
right.
with it, so we can clearly take that one out.
I don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is either. I
Yeah,
wonder if we had
well,
thought
there's-
about it because we. Yeah, I mean, we did have someone here live streaming for us. There was staff needed at a couple of meetings.
We should start masking. That was the only one.
That's true.
The laptops is, that's the big one,
Yeah,
right? Student
yeah.
laptops and staff laptops.
Yeah, staff
Those
laptops
are
are $1,400.
They're
and
expensive,
Student laptops are,
about 300.
Staff laptops are 1,100.
I got 16,500. I'm sorry, for student laptops, and then
Yep.
staff laptops are 14,300.
Right. 1,100 each.
We thought about doing like a sponsorship kind of thing, you know, if somebody wanted to do like a holiday sponsorship of some laptops. I mean, there are companies
Oh,
that
yeah,
are
it's-
doing it,
yeah, it's
so
out of the box.
you're the out of the box thinker usually.
Oh, I know.
You're welcome. I brought that one up for you.
Yeah, and our student laptops, we had said 55 to, keep us on our replacement cycle. We probably can reduce that a little bit, especially if we're able to utilize some ESSER funds, so we can look into that. And then the staff laptops are tough. They are very expensive. And if we get behind in that replacement, then you get, a chunk that needs to be replaced all at once.
Staff laptops, I understand, we probably should leave that one alone, but iPads, to go to Tom's point, there's only $1,800 in that line for new iPads. And we've got that many that can't be updated, why are we only budgeting for 1,800 for that?
Oh, iPads, we only have 5 new iPads listed, right, on that
Didn't
line?
Tom just say there are 37 that are out of date?
37 are out of date. We're 28 short, we're 8 short of one-to-one capacity right now. From what I understand, but
For iPads in
Yeah.
kindergarten and first?
that's the number I have
Yeah.
here from it.
And I know we've never tried to be one-to-one in K, or, they usually use them in centers and so on.
But for remote purposes,
remote,
if we
yeah.
had to provide
Right.
a one-to-one situation, we'd be 8 short.
Yeah.
But 30, the ones that are outdated right now, there's 37.
I didn't realize.
So
this.
maybe that could be something that we could
We can definitely use
pursue through.
our Title IV funding, because I think that's supporting well-rounded education and working with our robots and, but that's not gonna help the budget, because Brian was only asking for 5
Yep.
of the iPads to be replaced.
So, yeah, those numbers just still clearly match up, so there's a big disconnect there.
Well, and I wonder about the 13 staff laptops. That's almost half of the laptops being replaced, so that feels a little high to me. And again, I don't have the inventory in front of me, so I can't speak to that. It could be because we weren't able to purchase any this year. That he's trying to, catch up for next year.
So what I'm contemplating here is there a way for us to reduce that and use the unassigned fund balance, like we talked about last time, to project to use that instead of building projects, to replace technology, buy technology for? I'm thinking that's a very clear, easy way for us to stay on top of the replacement, but recognize as a community that we don't have the resources to go out and buy every single new laptop now. And if we have nothing left at the end of the year, well, then we're just gonna have to defer and wait for, some unassigned fund balance for the next calendar year.
And we can utilize, a decent amount of our grant funds to help support that. Certainly not all of this, but we can definitely look to see how much we can utilize for that too.
The next 3 years, from a community member standpoint, the next 3 years are vital that we keep the budget almost in line with our default budget, because again, I don't want to keep harping on the same points. There's just a lot of stuff coming down that.
Yeah. Does the board have, and Pete does have his hand raised, does the board have a recommendation on where you'd like that number and what we can work to get towards at least? below
I mean,
one.
we're looking at hopefully, 15 will come out. And then
So
if
we
we're
can
looking-
definitely look at
65
reducing.
roughly, right?
We're
So
looking to move some of the technology to unassigned fund balance.
Yeah,
So 65.
65 and then take that 50 and bring that down to 30,
mhm,
take 20 off that.
mhm.
And then classroom supplies and materials.
That would only be
That
at
would be-
about 6,000.
So that
So
puts
the
us at-
curriculum
that puts
piece is
us at
assigned to
48,
that.
48,949. 49.
I wish I knew off the top of my head what the 6,000 was, why it's 6,000 up. The only thing I can think of is that the math workbooks we purchase every year, there's an increased cost if we're going with one of them, depending on which math program we go with. The math workbooks, I think I budgeted more because they were more expensive than what we used to pay for the Math and Focus. I think that might be where that's coming from, off the top of my head, a guess, because I can't think of anything else that we really were increasing. And I know one of the increases is also for math pilot materials for 6th grade, which I think that would be hard. It's a pretty small number. It's probably only $1,000 or $2,000. So some of that is probably that, which I don't think would be permissible in ESSER because it's piloting, it's not the implementation. Where that next year, if we have ESSER funds still available, it's likely we would be able to, for our 6th grade math books, if we have approval this year for math books for next year, it's likely we would be able to get approval again to purchase our 6th grade for a new math program because we're a year off with 6th grade. The purchase is K-5 for next year.
So we're able to bring roughly around 40, that down to roughly around 42,000 if we do that math. Am I right, Amy?
Which would be,
I was around 49 when I was just doing it.
So 20 off the technology, it's bringing that down to 30.
Yeah.
Classroom, about 6,000, and then 15,000 for the curriculum piece.
what was the
I- I-
6,000?
maybe
for
double
classroom?
counting.
15,000 is coming out of the second line.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then it was how much we were gonna cut from technology?
So what's the
20,000. 20 we're cutting, right?
Yeah, what was the 6,000 number?
Sorry, so the
What
6
is
is what's left in the classroom supplies
My
and
apologies.
materials.
I thought you were saying we can have another 6,000.
Sorry, no,
Yeah.
I was saying I would be hesitant to
Okay.
cut that, but if you need me to look deeper, we can. I think if we really need to look deeper at some of our grants and other ways to utilize funding, and we needed to cut a little bit more, I think it probably would be easier from technology than it would be from the classroom materials.
So I think we're at about 49,000.
Okay. That's better than 83, but.
Pete, you had your hand raised?
Yes, I just question and suggestion is, are there programs available from HP, Hewlett Packard, Apple, Dell for school districts for refurbished computers? And my question and suggestion is, are we exploring the opportunity to possibly replace some of our tablets and computers with, at the entry level of our needs, with items that are used, refurbished, limited guarantee, obviously, but we're saving a ton of money with new products that will serve the need of the students and the teachers. I would hope that we'd explore that opportunity.
Yeah, I can definitely bring that back to Brian. I know with the student laptops being so inexpensive, only $300 each, and again, we get educational discounts, but only $300 each. It's almost not worth it, if you're looking at a refurbished one at 200 or 250. The staff laptops, they get pretty heavy use. So there's always been a caution or a worry there, but I'm definitely happy to bring that to Brian to talk to him about.
Thank you.
So we're comfortable with that being the number then for choice? And again, we probably shouldn't finalize this tonight. Or we'd have to have an emergency meeting then.
Yeah. I mean, I feel more comfortable with that. I think here's the thing, I think it's lean as it is.
Oh, I
And
know,
We're cutting the lean, and I mean, that's never comfortable for,
100%.
it's never comfortable for anybody to cut the lean, and I
And I don't want
and
to
we
touch
need to be
faculty or
fiscally,
staff.
right, we need to be fiscally responsible, but it's already a really lean budget. I think we've been very proactive about keeping a lean budget, so the nature of the beast is that it stays a lean budget. So I'm comfortable with that. I agree with you. I don't think we can finalize it tonight, because I think we need to know those numbers. Sorry. But that's me talking. I mean,
We don't have a
I mean-
budget committee this year, and so the burden is actually put on the 5 of us
right.
to present it to the community, and if the community is not supportive of it, it just creates a bigger issue for us down the road. So.
Well, but it
Yeah,
also
well,
goes to show that the budget committee in years past has been on board with our budget, and those people who have served in the past didn't feel that it was necessary. I'm hoping because it's been such a lean budget and we've been so transparent about it. I'd like to believe that's true. Maybe that's not true, but
And Kristen
So-
has something.
Okay,
Kristen.
and I was gonna say, just a
Sorry.
reminder that you can make changes after the public hearing. So, if you're wanting to finalize to the point where if we're able to find some additional savings, we could do that. Then you bring it to the public hearing, or if you would prefer to have another meeting between now and the public hearing, we can do that as well.
So I know Kristen's got her hand raised, so please don't let me speak out of turn if you want to go first.
I do want to go to Kristen. Do you mind?
Yeah, please, because I want to follow from what you really just said.
Kristen, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just, as I read this and I'm listening to our conversation on, I see we're skimming away at a point where it's going to cost us more later, especially in terms of technology. So I feel like, there's been really good suggestions made. I'm concerned about this ending up costing us more in a next budget if we keep nicking away further, if that makes sense.
I totally hear you.
Yeah, you bring up a very valid point, Kristen, but the idea or the concept of using the unassigned fund balance to make up that gap at the end of the year is really where our thought is. Meaning that if we have leftover capacity at the end of this year, we can then analyze and say, how many computers do we actually really physically need to replace? We could buy those with the funds that are remaining at the end of the year, but still returning a good chunk of that to the tax base. So it's not a matter of us not replacing technology, but it's us allocating our resources in a way that can gain community support. That's really what the focus is.
Basically trying to make the most of the already budgeted funds. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Back to you.
And so, Amy, I guess instead of us holding an emergency meeting, maybe we approve the presented tonight, have the public hearing,
With the changes that we discussed.
bingo,
do
have
that,
the public
yep.
hearing, gain community feedback, and then make additional cuts at that time.
Yep.
Based on community feedback and viewpoints and discussions that we have with community members between now and then.
Yeah. I would-
That way it would avoid an emergency meeting, Amy can get the packet together and get going. That's just my thought.
Now, are you approving this as presented or this as, this with your
Cuts.
amendments?
Yeah. Yeah, and I calculated that amount, so I can change the warrant that is in this presentation to that amount.
Look at you, their spreadsheet already. She's gonna be done. You have the 20 in for technology and the 15 in for
Yep, so
materials.
it's, yes, so it's a,
Now, if we don't get the
Grant.
grants,
right,
after the public hearing, we're able to add. We can only subtract, correct?
Correct. We cannot, unless you bring a proposal forward at the deliberative and the community
Increase.
votes on that increase,
Okay.
and then you would be able to add, but you would have to bring it forward as a motion and it would have to pass.
So then does it make more sense to leave it as it is right now
And then cut
and then cut as
after our
appropriate,
public
rather
hearing.
than, because we can only cut.
And
so
when
we're
do you
putting
think we'll
it
know
back.
about the grant?
Are we putting it back to the, it's
I'd
okay.
say put it back to the.
Yeah,
where it
when
is
will we know
today.
about the grant though? Is that, we're talking like April or
Sorry.
May?
Oh, no,
No.
a few weeks.
Why don't we do that, Sarah?
I think leave it where
Yeah.
it
As
is.
presented,
leave it as it is presented right now.
Amy, just keep really good notes about our discussion.
I've got them.
And then being able to flip it over after the public.
So
hearing.
we're not taking out the 15 or the 20.
I think we leave
Or
it
we
right,
take the 20
Because
out.
we can't go up,
we can only go
we
down.
can only go down, and we can make a motion at that meeting after the
Yeah.
public hearing to further reduce.
So if we're saying basically right now, this is our highest case scenario, we can go down from here, but we can't go back up if we take it down.
Plan is
Yeah.
absolutely go down.
Yes, the
but
plan
we
is
just
to
need
go
know
down.
the mechanism.
I do feel we could safely go down $20,000 in technology now, even without knowing if we're gonna get grants approved or not, as long as, I was looking at, we started an unassigned fund balance list already. It's actually in the card there. I don't know if you can access it. I think it was our like brainstorming list.
Well, we promised never to ask that until the spring, so.
Well, what it
amount?
is, yeah. We had an initial discussion card, I just found it, and we have a brainstorming list. So we had on just, so your kind of big picture, if we're kind of kicking technology to the unassigned fund balance, we had repair for baseball field, repairing the backstop and moving it closer to home plate. Don't know about that, that's Roger. I don't know if you know. We have in the gymnasium, we have to replace the divider curtain, which those are expensive. There's a skylight repair listed on here. Is this, no, this is not.
You're looking at 70.
But
We
he
don't have
attached-
a curtain in our gym.
I know, I'm like, this isn't right. So that's in the Mont Vernon board meeting. He attached the wrong one.
Oh,
That's why, sorry.
okay.
I was like, I'm so excited. We have this unassigned fund balance list. How great is
Like
this?
our
And it's,
dugouts were community provided. that,
Yeah,
yeah.
they just
Why do we
put
need to
there.
move those?
So no, we actually do have a list, but what we have in there is the replacement of the furniture, phase 1.
oh, I found it.
Yeah.
Yes, it was replacement furniture. Okay.
I have it on
Much
my
less
slide.
exciting than.
Oh,
You guys are
Yeah.
jumping all around
I know.
my slides.
Oh, sorry, I know, we didn't let you finish. So replacement furniture, which, and which we did pull out of the budget, that replacement furniture and then
Talked about that last week.
technology. So if those are the only 2 items, do you want to go forward?
Yeah.
If those are the only 2
Keep going.
items,
There
I
we
was
go.
worried if we had a big, long list.
Yeah, okay.
So we're looking at $26,000 in unassigned fund balance at the end of the year, potentially being leveraged for replacement of technology and computer furniture.
Yes.
I think we can successfully pull out $26,000
Mhm.
after, after something happens. From the budget, we'll still be able to return some
Yeah.
cash. to-
Yeah, because that's the only item that we have assigned so far.
Okay.
All these other items are capital needs. We've gone over the.
I'm actually
extract
very
duct.
comfortable
Mhm.
reducing technology by 20,000.
Yeah,
And I think it's a nice compromise
Yep.
to go forward with and then have further reductions after.
So we're making that change this evening.
Yes, please.
Okay.
That's my recommendation.
I-
I'm only one.
I agree with that.
I agree. Yep.
All right. So hold
And
on.
Pete has his hand.
Pete,
Pete, you're on mute.
Sorry. Piggybacking on Kristen's comment, and I got it. I know that if you buy cheap, sometimes a replacement, 2, 3, 4 years down the road bites you. But if we can do, I'm just throwing out a number, 50% of our technology needs we buy new, and 50% we buy refurbished, guaranteed by the supplier, whether it be Dell, HP, or Apple, then I think we're ahead of the game. I don't think every piece of equipment in the district has to be brand new. And that was my point. Are there times and people and positions that need a brand new? And yes, but I think there's money to be saved by exploring the opportunity to buy refurbished, good equipment for our students.
Yeah, I'll definitely explore that with Brian because I don't know if we have or not. So I'm happy to do that.
Kristen, are you okay with the $20,000 reduction this evening?
Sorry, my mouse doesn't want to cooperate. Yes, I think that sounds good.
Jess, you're okay with
Yep.
that? Yeah, I feel comfortable with that as well. It's a step in the right direction.
Okay.
Amy, are you comfortable?
You
with
okay
that?
with your
So,
slides?
yeah, so you can move to the next slide.
Hopefully it refreshed.
So, okay, so that's the
Okay.
discussion of the classroom materials.
Yeah.
So, I'm over that. All right,
So it did not refresh. If you can hit
You want me to refresh?
escape and then to get out of the. Yeah.
Eat your dogs, make us smile.
Sorry.
No worries.
Okay, there we go.
There we go.
So that's been updated now with the 20,000 reduction.
Okay.
So that's your Article 2, and then the next slide is your Article 3, which is the 50,000.
Okay.
So those are the two articles for you to.
The only thing I ask about Article 3 is.
Yep.
We in the past have had that specifically for our deliberative presentation, a really good sort of metric of, or matrix, about when and what will be replaced in what calendar year.
Yes.
Just want to make sure that that is fine tuned, because the roof's been replaced. There may be this assumption out there that there's really nothing else worth saving for it.
Mm.
And that's clearly not the case. So we just want to make sure we capture that.
Yep,
and
so on
articulate that to
the
community.
long-term facilities plan, if you go back.
Slide number 8.
Yep, and this is just for this evening,
Yep.
but I'll have the schedule
Perfect.
that will show that.
Great.
So, yeah, so this presentation is really just to sort of
Right.
bridge between
Yeah.
the original presentation and the public hearing slides that will be more in depth.
Appreciate it.
Yep. But yeah, the HVAC duct replacement, which is part of that program, and then later on, the playground replacement and then the fire alarm system. And that was really all that is in there, but it's certainly, those are, you know, important items for you to save, which is why you need the 50,000. And you clearly need the 50,000 to complete the HVAC duct replacement project.
Right.
So,
And we're able to utilize the ESSER to begin that
Yep.
project.
Yep.
Fairly, or definitely.
Yeah.
Desperately.
Yes. All right, so actually probably go back, Tom, to Article 2. Budget. That's what we'd be looking for the board to move this evening.
I move Article 2 and Article 3 as amended and written.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay, we need
Danae, do you want me to send you this?
a roll call vote. Any discussion, first
Do
of
you
all?
have it or do you?
Yeah, it's on the.
Hearing none, we need a roll call vote.
O'Keefe, yes.
Hinckley, yes.
Lawrence, yes.
Clark, yes.
Pete?
I asked him to unmute.
It's chasing the dogs.
He may have stepped away.
No, we don't need that.
Pete, are you with us?
I have the last connection.
Yeah, and I think, and Adam is on, which I think he's now the host, so I can't ask to unmute Pete. So he must have stepped away.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know why it's.
Well, we have a majority, yes.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Just an update on the food service program. So we.
And the buses.
So we did hire a new food service director who is starting on Monday. Great. So we're very excited about that.
Internal or external?
External.
Okay.
So, so we're excited and hopefully we'll have her up to a meeting. So folks can meet her. We also were able to fill the vacant position in
The
the kitchen,
part-time.
the part-time.
Mhm.
So that person is starting on the 13th.
So we don't need the chief to come in on Mondays anymore?
May not.
I think we should still have the chief in on Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, which is really great because I know the person who's been helping out is moving for the winter soon. So this worked out really well. That's good. Yeah. Thank you for the update. Yeah.
And then the late bus, we're canceling the late bus?
We are, yes. So
Okay.
ridership has been very minimal.
Okay.
And looking to also to try to have some savings. We are, with increased gas prices, this was one area that we felt would have the least amount of impact, but try to save some funds this year.
So are we eliminating the late bus for the entire year, or are we eliminating
This
the late bus
point.
for the winter sort of session?
At this point, we're suspending it
Okay.
for the year.
Okay. Not enough to be really nosy, but what type of drop did we see? Are we seeing like no one riding this bus and it's going
It
back
is.
for one or two kids and then?
It's very, very minimal. So I had the middle school assistant principal and the high school do some reconnaissance on who was riding for a while, and it's very, very minimal.
And why do you think? Is it because COVID and kids aren't staying
I mean,
after
it's
school as much?
it's pretty late with
Okay.
now, the schedule being later,
Okay.
so it's dark when they're
And actually,
getting off and.
I heard from some that most sports don't end in, clubs end in time, but most sports don't end in time to catch the late bus.
Mhm.
So the late bus actually doesn't have a really big pool from which to pull students. So, a student who might be staying after school for extra help would be able to take the late bus, or a student staying for a club would be able to take the late bus. But most sports teams and, coaches are told, at least at the middle school, that if a student needs to ride the late bus, they can't be penalized for that and they can leave practice early. Most students aren't willing to leave practice early to ride the late bus. They get a ride with someone else. So it's just not enough kids after school for that time that the bus actually arrives. And then
And geographically, it's difficult. I mean,
It
there's
is.
only two, so you're not always able to get close to where you live. And riding it,
So the only thing I'm gonna say about that is, when I first joined the board, there was one late bus, and this town was so discriminated against with that late bus. It had 3 stops, the firehouse, Route 13
wow.
South, and Tater Street, that's it. And so I worked
Yeah.
with the superintendent, and we created a Mont Vernon bus. And if we bring this back, I just want to make sure that this community is engaged with that conversation, because it's unfair to us during that entire process. We just weren't served by it, so I'm sad to see it go, but obviously I can see the budget things, but just keep that in mind as a business administrator.
Yeah, that's good.
That 2
That's good
years
to know.
we're revisiting it, please, please, please return back to the 2, even though it's more expensive, it's just an equity thing.
Yeah,
Mhm.
understood. Thank you.
Thank you. We would be having public input 2 of 2, but we have no public with us this evening, unfortunately. We did not have non-public listed on our agenda, but I do believe that we have a reason for a non-public. I don't have the RSA noted. Do you know what it is by chance?
I do have Adam here on Zoom. He did turn his camera on. Oh, it's back off again. Adam, could you maybe send me a message with details on that non-public and how you'd like us to handle that? I wasn't sure what the RSA was. And if you needed me to leave my computer, stop recording and so forth, or how you want me to support that.
Connection has been bad at the SU, so we probably turn his camera on. Better. I'll send him a message.
You can FaceTime.
It's related to negotiations. So,
It's 92 or 91A3 reputation,
I
so.
think it's in our meetings.
I know Adam is here for us. We're gonna be going into non-public in just a minute. We're still recording, but are we waiting for the RSA for the
I think we're
to
waiting
do the
for the RSA, and then we just have to wait for Jess
motion?
to come back so we can motion and
Yeah, it's it's for negotiations. I'm not sure of the little letter.
So 2A.
Oh, Amy's right. It's a non-meeting because it's negotiations, so we can actually adjourn.
But
Okay.
we also have a,
Oh, we do have a none, but what's yours?
yeah, so that's a
I do want
revocation, so that would be.
See.
C.
Okay, so we are not going to,
We're
or,
not going to adjourn.
Adjourn,
first.
okay.
We're going to go into non-public.
And is
Okay.
Adam able to join us or?
yes, Adam's here and able to join. It, recording is still on, so you have to stop recording, but we're just waiting for the motion.
Yeah, we just,
I make a motion to go into non-public. As previously stated.
I'll second that motion. Any discussion? No, we need a roll call vote.
O'Keefe, yes.
Lawrence, yes.
Eckhoff, yes.
Oh, Clark, yes.
Okay, I will stop recording.
Thank you.